Excellent. Okay. All right, here we go. Since completing a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling with a focus on expressive arts therapy in 2020, Herman, they, them, has worked as an educator, individual counselor, group counselor, and briefly as a clinical supervisor. Drawing from a rich cultural, creative, and compassionate background, they have a deep understanding of growing up with different and contradictory ethnicities and social structures. They are invested in decolonizing their practice with an eye towards the power, privilege, and oppression that influences the structures that often keep us in a state of suffering and struggle. Identifies as an American Colombian trans mental health counselor, facilitator, artist, and meditator. Rather than focusing on fixing, Bed's counseling approach is centered on creating the conditions that will allow the client to form or reform neural networks, orient themselves in the society from a wider lens, and integrate the mind body split that has left so many of us in a state of suffering and incongruence. Internal family systems and person centered psychodynamic models also support their theoretical and practical frameworks. Their practice has often been with folks experiencing low self-esteem, communication issues, anxiety, trauma, and spiritual confusion. Welcome to Literally Nothing Matters, Bed Herman. You
Thanks
have
for
quite a
having
bio. That was impressive. I love
me. I know. I was listening back to it and I'm like, damn. All right. It's
Yeah, I'm
okay. I got
impressed.
this.
My goodness. So we're so excited to see you. I actually, as a brief background, reached out to my own therapist, asking them if they knew anyone that would be interested on coming on the podcast to speak a little bit about anxiety around the holidays, family dynamics, along with a plethora of other topics we're going to kind of dive into today. And she sent back a whole list of people that seemed like they would be open to it. And I just felt like I did look and did some background into their profiles on psychology.com, and even if they had like social media or whatever. And I just felt like you were so approachable. And obviously, I don't know you personally, but just your aura and the way that you present yourself is so approachable. And so I'm so excited for this conversation. And I feel like you're going to offer a really good lens into this very needed topic.
Cool. Happy to add my approachability to the conversation.
All right, so let's get started by hearing a little bit about your background. I mentioned your bio, but kind of like, how did you get here? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my gosh. How did I get here? I got here through a lot of help from my friends and family, to be honest. I think that uh, my path was not set out. It was not super clear ever. Often has hiccups, has splits in the journey, kind of coming back, a lot of weaving lots of things together. So I was going to say, like, how did I get here? It was really through the help of wonderful, compassionate, patient people, privileged people, um, helping me out and guiding me along. So specifically going into mental health counseling, which was a career change for me in 2017. Yeah, was sort of like ushered over to the Leslie program under the auspices of a dear friend, Dr. Carter Carter, and some other folks in my friends groups who were like, "You gotta go there." And I will also just like say, I also got here because I needed dough. All right, it's because I was a struggling artist in New York City, and it was not paying the bills, and I was not. I was very much in a sense of like, how do I live with a lot of the arts production in New York um, on a very low wage in an industry that's it commodifies art. It throws money at so many things. I will not get on my soapbox, as one of my bosses likes to say. Not getting on a soapbox about art. That's a different podcast. But yeah, lots of friends help and lots of like, oh, there's a way to integrate the arts in a healing way, not a commodification capitalist, like, let's not pay you anything for your work way. So yeah, that's maybe one of the many ways I got here.
Excellent. So I'm hearing a little bit about how you were an artist before and maybe that you kind of like shape shifted it to maybe your therapy modalities today. So on that kind of trajectory, I know from experience that there are like a billion different types of actual therapy. And I don't think people realize that there's not just like psychodynamic therapy, there's all of these different treatment options. And I love that you have kind of this expressive background. So I kind of want to hear from you. What are some traditional and untraditional ways that we can seek out therapy?
Yeah, totally. I will amend. I am definitely still an artist, just not an artist like whereas I was like trying to be a professional artist before. I think now I'm just an artist and like it's taken a while to try to detach like what society says like you are this and you are that if you make money doing so.
Mm.
And just like re-owning like what I am. I'm a counselor and I'm definitely still an artist, just not the type of artist I was before. So just that clarification.
I love that
So
so much.
yeah, in terms of yeah, I hope another tangent, but you know, if someone wakes up one day is like, I'm a napper, I nap. I'm so good at napping, and like that's part of my identity for sure. Like yeah, so still an artist, even though I don't make money off of
Yeah.
it.
We talk about that frequently. Even when we first started the podcast, we were like, it's hard because when you introduce yourself, we're so programmed to be like, my name is this and this is my job. And like that's your identifier and that's it. But there's so many wonderful layers to people. And like your job doesn't have to be just the only identifier.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes into different diagnoses because I think I forget the exact word count. The exact word count was over 100 for sure. The number of times like employment or the word job, I think it was, comes up in the DSM, the diagnostic statistical manual that's like kind of the Bible for USA based clinical practice, like job work, job work. Can you do it? Can you do it? And we're very societally conditioned that like that's so much a part of our health, our identities, are all of that. But yeah, I'm glad that that's come up before. Pro napper Amanda over here.
I aspire to be. Someone should start to pay me for it. That'd be
Are you in
awesome.
the nap ministry? Have you heard of the nap ministry?
What? No.
Oh my gosh, so many tangents. Well, like, bringing it back. This is also what I do as a counselor, is I like bring it back to the core thing,
Yeah.
wrap it around. We got a place to go. So let me jump in with the modalities. There are traditional methods for sure. And the history of psychology is actually fairly new in comparison to the history of like the healing arts, I would say, which, you know, any human has likely interacted with, you know, the offsets of indigenous healing, the sort of um, the residue of arts healings, or even going to a concert, for example, and you come out and you're like, ah, that was the best, and you feel a little transformed if you've seen your favorite band or whatever. So but traditionally in psychology, the main ones that you hear of are, like you mentioned, psychodynamic. The newer evidence-based models are CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. This is the point where I want to just like start throwing acronyms at you, and I'm like ACT, acceptance commitments therapy. That one's a little less known. But because, at least in the US and in my training, a lot of these therapies coincided with the proliferation of neuroscience research models, and a cognitivist view of how the brain works, which just means like we started looking at our brains like machines, um, and like computationally, and the cognitive became sort of paramount, and everything that you do kind of falls under that, or the other sort of more traditional modality is behavioralist. So have you heard of Pavlov's dog?
Mhm.
Right. It's that. So doing experiments on animals or some like kind of sketchy experiments on people and kids, that constitutes more traditional methods. Expressive arts therapy, likely people in their minds, if they aren't familiar, will be like, oh, that's art therapy. Different thing, actually. So expressive arts therapy, sorry, was more codified in the late 70s and 80s and distilled music therapy, art therapy, trauma therapy, all these different creative therapies into what is sort of the most essential, landing on the importance of imagination. So important. The importance of being creative, the importance of being adaptable and attuned and embodied, which kind of lessens a little of the more traditional focus on the frontal lobe, the frontal cortex of like cognitive stuff. How am I analyzing this? What is my past? Things like that. But there are so many, say these days saying therapy is like saying exercise. Like, do you know, like how many, just off the top of your head, ways to exercise can you think of right now?
Right.
Like
Right.
endless.
Endless. So like there's sand tray therapy, which falls under play therapy, which you go and I've done it. It's amazing. It's so cool. You go in and the counselor is sitting on the floor with you and you're very grounded and you just play in the sand. And all of a sudden
Oh.
the therapist, or at least the therapist I had, was amazing. I only saw her for a few sessions and she was like, I wonder why you placed that toy, which in my case was a dragon, right over here. And like, isn't that a funny relationship between these other two, like more soldier like things? And I was like, oh my God, it's my parents. and,
Oh my gosh, that is
there was just like this
though.
relief. Yeah, exactly. And
That's
she
so
didn't
interesting.
do anything. There was no sort of analysis, there was no whatever. But we're really finding nowadays in contemporary counseling practices, especially with the advent of non-traditional methods, like the integration um, of the body and the subtle body even and everything like that, that you can do with expressive arts therapy, which takes all of these different modalities, distills them into these main principles and practices, and then kind of teaches you to flow with life. So life is going to throw all these things at you, and expressive arts therapy really equips you with all these different tools for you to be ready for anything.
Mm, I love that.
That's so
Um,
awesome.
okay, so we know that there's all these different modalities and they're all offered to us. You might have to do a little digging or whatever to figure out which is going to maybe interest you and start there. But I found in my history finding a therapist is goddamn hard. Like it is so hard to find someone that matches your vibe, that you feel comfortable opening up with, someone that maybe you don't lean on too much. Like I've had therapists that I want them to be my mom, and then I'm like, this is becoming me trying to replace someone in my life, like there's so much to it. And I believe I saw, I don't know if it was your post or someone else that I follow, but they were saying how they were a therapist and they went through like 5 different therapists before that was you that found one that matched what they need. So if I am new, I haven't done therapy or I'm trying to switch therapist, what are some questions to ask therapists when you meet with them to see kind of like how if they're a good fit for you?
Yeah. First off, uh, I would say that um, just vibe check it, like gut check it, like feeling check it when you have that first consultation, whether it's in person, over the phone, or on Zoom. Take a look at the person. If you in the same way that when you were choosing between who to have on your podcast, you were like, you did some research, looked it up, and was like, oh, this person seems approachable. Try that. And then in the initial consult, which every therapist should have, if you just get assigned a therapist and you think that's it, um,
Not a good sign.
uh, there are so many folks who, yeah, I'm thinking of the clinical mental health counseling system right now. And like, for example, folks who are on mass health who can't afford to be choosy often find themselves pigeonholed and work with therapists who they should not be matched with. If you're getting a vibe that it's not the right fit, like don't do it. And also, like I said, in I think I mentioned to you, like, yeah, give it a few sessions. If by the third you're like, ooh, I don't need my mom to be in this therapy session, like say thank you. No therapist will be no therapist I don't think should be like offended. They're like, it didn't work.
Yeah.
There's
If
and
they
also
are, then that's a sign. That's a red
yeah,
flag right there.
and
Yeah.
also a therapist should also be able to tell you. So like I screen out for certain diagnoses because I know I don't work well with them. We might be a really good fit vibe wise, but like if I don't know that I can really provide the sort of landscape for you to walk freely in, then like I would tell you too. And I've had therapists in the past be like, listen, I actually have to stop working with you. And this was a while ago. And at the time I was like, oh my God, my therapist broke up with me. What
That's
the
what I was just gonna say. I think I'd have a panic attack. Why don't you
Right.
love me? No one loves me.
I know. And
Rejection.
I know. Like, it led me to the therapist I have now, who is awesome. I love him. He's the best. And I'm like, this is great.
That's
So
awesome.
it's a mix of both. But I think that I think the most important part is that you feel comfortable. I personally don't think that the therapeutic alliance should be like an extreme sport. No one should get hurt on this. So
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so now let's get into the meat of the conversation. Anxiety. So
Woo.
it seems to like peak at this time of year, at least for maybe myself or friends that I
100%.
post with. And so I want to just kind of like dive into that huge idea about anxiety. So what are just a few simple, clear, effective ways that we can become a little bit more grounded and a little bit more chill around this time of year?
great question. Um, one of the main things that one of the main things that I find helpful with anxiety is to finding multiple ways to let your body and your mind know that you are safe. If you're not safe, you should be freaking anxious. Like if you do sort of a pass around the room and you're seeing two family members that you only see once a year and they are predatory, listen to that. Don't ground yourself. Get out of there. Leave the room. Do whatever you need to do. But in terms of actually grounding, and sort of a more practical thing, um, I like to literally check in with the ground. So as for folks listening online, uh, I'm literally sitting on the ground right now. I'm I have a little um, I have a little meditation cushion that well, it's just a cushion that my roommate made, which is beautiful and so grounding. And I know that she made it, and just feeling that intentionally taking even 30 seconds, maybe closing your eyes if that feels safe, maybe not, but I like to close my eyes and just be like, can I feel the cushion under my seat? If you're standing, can I feel the ground at my feet? Does it feel stable? Um, am I here, and am I supported? Am I supported by the ground? There's in physics like equal and opposite forces, like I'm meeting the ground and the ground meeting me. That's a benefactor. That's someone, that's something, that's some being, that's some sort of force in the world, gravity, that's helping you. So it's a really good grounding method if like everything out here is causing anxiety, and then you go all the way to the ground. And there is a more fleshed out practice by Lama Willem Miller, who I meditate with, that's actually called ground. And you go through that acronym. G is ground, R is rest, so like grounding, resting. O is opening. So once you know that you're grounded, feet on the floor, butt in the chair, whatever it is, you can like rest, relax into your body, and then open to the rest of the room. Maybe you notice those two family members are just like having a drink over there, and you're actually totally safe. And you're like, oh, those assholes. And you like do whatever you need to do. Undoing, GROU, undoing any knots, being present for everything that's here. And then N and D, I sometimes don't get to, so I don't have them off the top. But she has a great book called The Wakeful Body. I highly recommend it for anyone who needs grounding practices for anxiety. So that's just one of
I
many.
love that because I think that sometimes I get even more overwhelmed if I'm in an anxious state because I have all of these tools and strategies, but there's so many of them that you can't kind of simplify in the moment. So I think just finding the ground, where
Where's
is the ground, you know,
Where is it?
bring that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting back to this anxiousness around maybe this time of year, what are some common reasons? Maybe we feel alone in this, but as I'm stating now, I don't know if it's 100% true, but I just get kind of like this feeling that a lot of people feel this way. So do you think that that's true? And like, why are we feeling that? Is it chemical or biological? Is it more environmental stressors? Like, what's going on?
Help.
During this time of year specifically.
Yeah.
Mercury is in Gatorade.
Yes.
Something's in the microwave.
Where the hell is she?
I think that there are a number of factors. I'm very much a fan of averaging out all of them. But you are right. Often these times are very challenging for folks. Statistically speaking, suicide rates after Christmas and New Year's spike. Emergency room visits may spike. And at least that's according to a statistic that I remember from when I was working at Community Health Link. So that was a couple years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if it still stands. So yeah, you're not wrong. And why do I think that is? I think some of it has to do with the pressure, the societal pressure to be with family. And if you don't have a family, the societal pressure is like inversed. And it's like, why don't I have this thing that society says I need? I think that in our society, there is a lack of intentional interdependence with communities that you are already with and already around. And the focus can be on reconnecting with communities that don't make you feel safe, like the family unit, for example. So a lot of people go home for the holidays, and then the inverse is like, I don't have a home to go home to, right? So those are aggravating features, I think, that cause anxiety. And I think that also, as we know biologically, vitamin D, being out in the sun, being able to go for a run, being able to at least be in community with nature and the outdoors becomes a little bit harder for those, and myself included, who find it hard to be outside when it's colder. So I think those are two factors, but I think it's compounded by the lack of light, compounded by the increase in your cell phone light or your computer light, which we're just like glued to. you know? So, yeah, a lot of factors contribute to that, but you're right. It kind of tends to go up a little.
I read this thing. I don't remember where. It also maybe was a TikTok. I don't know.
Never with Nancy.
But it was saying that our society, like specifically in the US, because we're such like a work focused, capitalism focused society, that we're missing this like important third place where you gather with friends, or like what you were saying, like finding that community that maybe isn't your like God-given family or however you'd put that. um and that leaves a lot of people feeling very lonely or disconnected, and like that's also why we love watching TV shows and getting that feeling like Friends, where they all meet communally at the coffee shop every day, and we're all like, we are struggling every day to like get through work, make dinner, do all this, like where do they have the time? Like I never see my friends. Like that can feel really disconnecting. It wasn't a
Yeah,
question, but I
the
don't
third place is so important. And the third place has it in my limited knowledge has been slowly and systematically erased from societies, because their places. I mean, my third place is the library.
know.
It how punk is the library? It's this free space that you can go in. There's water so you can hydrate. There are bathrooms so that you can use them. You're surrounded by knowledge and books, and a lot of libraries now have the library of things. So you can check out, I checked out a DSLR camera, like a
That's so
really good one.
cool.
Like, I think it was like in the thousand of dollars, like type of camera, and you can buy a ring, or not buy, you can see, I'm so programmed, like
Yeah.
the holidays. You can check out a ring light. You can check out, the other day I was asking the librarian there, I was like, I wish I had a sewing machine. And she was like, let's see if we can get one for the Library of Things so that you can check one out. They are
Oh
the
yeah.
best. They're the best third spaces, but these used to be affiliated, I believe, with churches. Did you see that on the TikTok that maybe we both saw?
Wait, like the third place was a church or the libraries were?
No, like the concept of the third
Oh,
place.
I was
Sometimes
like, don't ruin libraries for me.
no, the church of the
No
library.
offense.
No, but like a third place being
Yeah,
in a
that makes
church
sense.
basement, or the third place
Yeah.
being at a VA in the basement, like all these
Right.
different places that would have these. But I think maybe we watch the same TikTok.
Probably. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
that
every
sounds
time.
really cool. I have not seen this third place, but clearly my TikTok will hear it now, so I'll get it.
You'll get it.
Okay. So going back to kind of like these family dynamics around the holidays, right? So once a year, you're supposed to get together with the people that you love. And as Amanda said, like your God-given family, so blessed to have, some people like do have amazing families and supportive families. And I feel very jealous of them, to be honest. I mean, I love most of my family members and it's great. But going back to this question, sometimes we're around our family members who we're supposed to feel super duper comfortable with and everything's good, but it's awkward. Like I see you once or twice a year. We have nothing in common. Like I'm supposed to be able to kind of like do anything for you, but I don't even know who you are. So I guess my question is, how can we be around people that we're supposed to kind of like be super comfortable with, but we don't really have a relationship with, have healthy boundaries and not feel really awkward around? Is that a question or is that just me venting?
It's
Definitely a question.
well, I guess I would throw it
It's a
back.
loaded
How do
one.
you do that? How do you do that with so many other folks that you see all year who you don't know and you might see once a year, or actually maybe more often because they're the clerk at the store and you don't know them, and maybe they give you some awkward vibes. What do you do in those cases?
Yeah. No, I guess that's a good point. I think I just put expectations on myself that like I have to be really comfortable and really open with these family members because they're my family members, you
And
know?
you put that expectation, or who put that expectation?
I mean, I put it on myself now, but it's definitely a learned behavior.
Cool. So if you had an absence of that expectation, would that feel more comfortable?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, definitely. You just simplified it all for me.
Wow.
So expectations are really can be really complicated, but I think that a practice, whether it's a daily affirmation of like this expectation may have entered my life at one point and may have
Oh
been
my God.
really
Every time.
helpful. And yeah, homeboy's like, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely get rid of the expectation. Woo woo. Woo, woo. Yeah, if it was helpful at one point, great. Probably helpful when you were being socialized.
Mm.
And now it doesn't serve you anymore. So checking in with whose expectation it is, whether you want to keep it or not, and whether you can just gently let it go, not suppress it, because if there's anything that is worse in clinical practice, and I wish is my big wish for certain therapists, is like, do not get rid of the problem. There's no problem to get rid of. There are only more ways of looking at the same problem where it's like, oh, it's like not a problem from this angle. um, because if you see a problem that needs to be fixed, and you say don't have expectations, it's like if I say, okay, for the next, like, just drawing from a teacher of mine, Mingyur Rinpoche, he's like, okay, for the next 10 seconds, I'm going to time it. Don't think of pizza. Don't do it. All right. And go.
Yeah. That's all you think of.
And 10.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
So
exclusively thought about pizza.
I do think, and that's tossed around a bunch. Like, just don't have expectations going into it, like about so many different things in our lives. And that's so impossible. So I'm so happy you said that.
So notice the expectation. I would invite everyone this holiday season to cultivate a knowing and not a doing. Just noticing, non-doing. Because often, once you're grounded and safe and you notice something, you respond, which is not an anxious behavior, instead of react, which is the go-to anxious behavior.
So real.
I feel like I need an example.
I
Like,
react a lot.
Yeah. So an example of responding versus reacting, or an example of like a holiday situation that could come up.
maybe a holiday situation that could come up.
Okay. Amanda, what's a holiday situation that could come up?
Where you feel like uncomfortable around someone. Like, say you don't see your aunt for like all year or something. And then the first thing they ask you about is something super personal that you don't want to share with them.
Mm.
Um, what
So,
do you do? How do you have that conversation? How do you hold a healthy boundary?
right. So, along the line of noticing, you again, you kind of have to go into these situations intentionally. It's like, all right, I'm gonna walk into this dinner, family dinner, and I'm going to make it an intention to notice and respond rather than react. So if you have like a worry stone, have you heard of those? Or a fidget or something that'll just remind you in your pocket, that's a good one. So aunt comes over, asks you, how's your sex life? And you like grab the stone and you're
And
like,
then throw it at her.
yeah. You
Start
grab the stone, you dig it into her face. And then you throw the stone away and you run out of the house.
Love it.
How to commit murder.
Problem
Literally
solved. It doesn't matter. No. So yeah, remind yourself, you see that impact, you notice it. And if you can do a quick grounding, great. You're like standing there with, a cup in your hand, and she's asked that, and you grab your stone and you're like, oh God. And like, what does anxiety feel like? For a lot of people, they've described to me anxiety as like a like if you can see me now, you guys can see me now, like my shoulders are going up. I'm like going more inside. My voice is getting restricted. I hate everything. So noticing your body, and then if I like checking that the ground is like there for me, that's one way. I might not like totally unclench. But in this case, one thing that could help, A, is humor, and humor matched with the breath is a really good one. So in the same way that a small child who you've never met might come up to you and be like, hey Galen, what is your sex like with what is sex? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, what
Yeah.
did you just ask me, you little kid?
Yeah.
My shoulders have just gone down because I've laughed a little bit. I've breathed in and breathed out. That's more of a response because you're not reacting to the kid. You're holding space. That kid is not going to hurt you. You're safe. You're grounded, right? So if you can look at your aunt, have that all happen, and just remind yourself to like breathe in a big sigh. You could sigh out loud right in front of her and just be like, oh, what
Yeah.
did you just ask me? I'm sorry, I wanted to clarify that question. I
Mhm.
just want
Yeah.
to know, what is this really awkward, invasive question that you asked me, not knowing anything about my life?
Or like,
Yeah.
what did you mean by that?
What do you mean by that? Exactly. That's a really good one. So like grounding, breathing a bit, sad, maybe a little bit of a chuckle. Maybe you pretend, so this is more expressive arts therapy method, but maybe you're walking into this family situation and you're like, I'm in a movie. This is a movie and I'm playing the part of the middle child who's gonna get asked. Because if you see it in a movie, it doesn't make it, you might internally go the anxiety route for that person, but you're not full on like,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good method, sort of in the moment to just like, oh, really? Is that what you want to know? Okay. I don't really feel comfortable answering it right now. Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah. Let me hit the
or just
bar first, and then maybe we can talk about this super inappropriate thing.
yeah, you could always name it because you could say that. And the other thing is about these conversations is kind of what Caitlin said at the beginning is expectations. If you're expecting that aunt to
Mm,
react a certain way, you're also setting yourself up for more anxiety. Do not
definitely.
expect to have their needs be met over yours. Do not expect that anybody else's needs are higher or more precious than yours. It's both. You both need that. So like that's a good big sigh moment. Um in the event that you're talking to someone who you do see every day, like a parent or some other caregiver, and the holidays are also really like anxiety provoking, and you see that one family member who always kind of makes you more anxious on a different way. I recently was talking to a really good Dharma buddy of mine who shared very lovingly that at one point seeing a family member who was asking about his appearance and giving him a tirade about how he looked and sort of in a body shaming type of way. And he just cut through again, deep breath. Yes, but do you love me no matter what? And that floored his family member. His family member just stopped mid sentence and was like, what? Yeah, of course. Of course I love you no matter what. And fine, anything that comes after that, fine. Because if the basis of your relationship is love, then all that other stuff, while it might be triggering, won't make you as anxious if you know you're safe. And you
Mhm.
know you're safe when you know you're loved and you love the other person. With the other person who you like saw once, it's harder to get that, cultivate that feeling of like mutual love. So you just go, oh, you really, really.
It again. I really
Yeah.
love that too because I feel like actually doing that gives me a little bit of anxiety because I feel like ever since being a child, which I think is a lot of people's experience is like you're supposed to be well behaved and you're supposed to be likable and you're supposed to just make the situation be okay and like be on your best behavior. But like the person asking those inappropriate questions, like they're not on their best behavior. So why are we supposed to just like let it brush right over? Like if anything, you're doing a lot of other people's a favor by educating them on how to act like a normal human being.
Right. And like how the tables have turned all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, now I just thought of that. Like walk in and imagine like anytime you can walk in and before you talk to anyone in the room, do the what is that? Great exercise. Just like me. The person across who is talking to me right now, that person in the back of the room, that person sitting at the dinner table, they were a kid just like me. And they had expectations put on them just like me.
Mm-hmm.
And they're asking inappropriate questions like a 6-year-old, maybe not just like me. But the just like me thing also kind of relaxes what Caitlin brought up, which was a great thing to bring up, is this idea of expectations.
Yeah, I love that.
And dissolving that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to bounce around a teeny bit because I want to make sure I ask the questions I really want to. I have a billion of them. What are
Part two? Is this a
yeah,
2-part podcast?
yeah.
Might have to make it that.
Cancel your next appointment. No, I'm kidding. So if you would want to share, what are some daily practices or routines that you have in place that kind of help you to the best of your ability that I can steal?
Well, you cannot steal any of them because I'm just going to give them away freely. But what's something I do that's interesting because, like, I am notoriously in the strict sense undisciplined. So I'm trying to think of something that I actually do every day. I drink water every day. Thanks.
I actually really appreciate where you're going with this in general because I am so like someone tells me I journal every day, I meditate every day. I'm like, shit, I need to get this whole thing going. So I'm like feeling this answer already.
I agree.
Yeah. Actually, one thing that my therapist told me when I was bringing up some anxiety over the fact that my version of discipline does not match society's, does not match how we were educated, like go to school every day, do this every day, do all your homework, that kind of thing. But I tend to go in cycles. So I'll get really into one kind of thing and do it every day for a whole month. And then the next month, I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But that's good because the brain is really, at least from what we know, well wired to adapt. We're so adaptable. We will adapt to terrible situations and we'll adapt to good ones too. If you use a coping skill or a daily practice and you overuse it, it will be less efficient and not work for you as well. Often, not always, but often that's the case because your brain got used to it. So then you can kind of do it on autopilot, and that's not really like integrating into a calm system. So discipline, I have opinions on discipline, but
I
would
want
say
to hear all those opinions on discipline because our society is really annoying about discipline and like hustle and be disciplined. And
there's a place for it, and there's some people who are really adept to it, and those are the people who society favors a lot of the time and sort of uplifts a lot of the time, and the rest of us are down here like what. I would say that, yeah, so something that I actually do every day is I brush my teeth every day and I drink water every day and I breathe every day. Brushing your teeth, I have to say that that's not nothing because a lot of folks with a depression diagnosis can't even get to the brushing your teeth part. So like big ups to anyone who got up this morning, took a deep breath and was like, oh God, and like brushed their teeth or like before they went to bed or whatever it is. I've heard some people brush their teeth 3 times a day. I cannot do that.
Rabies.
Yeah, we don't need to be showing off.
My dentist stepmom like just carries some floss every time she's like, Like I cannot. But again, she's a dentist. Yeah. So water every day, but a semi okay, here's a weekly practice. I do meditate absolutely at least once a week. At
Okay.
least.
What does that look like for you?
For me, and then meditation is another one of these, which like sometimes I'm like, oh God, it's gotten to be a prickly word.
Yes.
But meditation is just like exercise, just like therapy. You can find all types of disciplines from a lot of things. Some practices are really appropriative and not cool. Some practices are westernized and like nice to do. My practice is in the Tibetan lineage of Vajrayana teachings. We meet every Tuesday. I'm part of that group.
Well,
It's not church, Amanda, chill.
yeah.
We're scared of church, so we're not
We're
going.
okay. But yeah, for some people it is church and they go every Sunday. For me, it's I
That's
do
lovely.
meditate once a week minimum. And um you know what I do at least once a day? I do a big breath in and out at least once a day. But not just like
I was gonna say like a complete breath.
I do
'Cause
that
do
a few times
all
a
the time.
day.
it's not the worst. The level up for that is to intentionally do it, to breathe not only like into yourself, but like if you can imagine breathing like a sponge, like just like I think I do that like if not every day, every other day, where I'll intentionally combine my sympathetic and parasympathetic systems in an intentional just like just a real deep breath in and a real deep breath out. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's crazy how much that can just kind of like bring you back.
Yeah. It's a good reset.
for sure. All right. Well, I know that we're coming up on time. So before I have you kind of beef yourself up, Amanda, did you have any quick questions that you wanted to ask?
Um, no, I feel like I just have loved this conversation and I love I don't know, I feel like so often these kind of conversations are very like a checklist, of like all of these new habits you have to incorporate, and it ends up being like more pressure than it is actually helpful. And even just right now, you giving these very basic examples that can actually mean a lot of just like what are some small ways you can like take care of yourself today, and that can be such like a self-love type of feeling. So I don't know, no questions. That's great.
Yeah. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. You had a few more that I
I know.
know we're
Maybe a part
lingering.
two in the new year.
No
I'm
worries. Yeah, we'll
happy to be back whenever you need me.
appreciate you. Okay, if people want to catch up with you, ask you questions, where can they find you?
I have a profile on Psychology Today. If you search for Bed Herman, I also have a website, counseling.bedherman.com, and there's a contact page there. And I also have an Instagram, which I am, speaking of anxiety, limiting my use on, because Instagram is a crazy place these days.
Yep. Feel that.
So that's also counseling.bedherman. So those are some good avenues.
Excellent. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. We will definitely be in touch. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and my best wishes to everyone going into the holiday season. I hope that it goes as smooth as possibly possible, for those who struggle, and for those who it's very joyous. Like, be as joyous and wonderful as possible. Be joyous for the rest of us in
Yeah, like
your
spread that
wonderful,
around.
like do not diminish your joy at all. This
Mm.
is not the time to do that. If anything, it's the time to increase it if you got it. And if you don't, then just know that there are others who are holding down the fort while we get there, because we'll all get there.
Hmm.
Love that. All right. Well, you also have a good holiday and we will chat soon.
All right, take care. I gotta jump off. Bye.
Thank you.